This is SelfWork, and I'm Dr. Margaret Rutherford. At SelfWork, we'll discuss psychological and emotional issues common in today's world and what to do about them. I'm Dr. Margaret, and SelfWork is a podcast dedicated to you taking just a few minutes today for your own self-work. Hi, and welcome back to SelfWork. I'm Dr. Margaret Rutherford. I'm a clinical psychologist out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Gosh, I've been practicing here for 25 years. I can't believe it. And about a year and a half ago, I decided to start a podcast because I wanted to extend the walls of my practice, not only to those who might be interested in psychological and emotional issues, who might even be in therapy, but to those who had never talked to a mental health professional and had no idea what it would be like to do so. I'm so delighted you're here, and it's a special day today because I'm doing my first live interview. Today I'm talking to Stuart Walker, who says very proudly he's a dad, a father of 3. He owns and manages 2 gyms here in Arkansas Clubhouse, so he's a small business owner as well. But Stuart's going to tell you the story of how pressure began to build up for him in his own personal life and his professional life. How the birth of his 3 children have brought him great joy, but initially great difficulty in the acceptance of 2 of those children having autism and one having very complicated physical problems. He's an example of what I've termed perfectly hidden depression, and he's here to tell you his story. I should tell you that Stuart came to me a couple of years ago and said, "Margaret, I know you're writing about depression and I want to tell my story." And so we did a YouTube video. We did talk about it first because I had been his therapist, and I was quite concerned that his participation might negatively influence a future therapist-client relationship. But Stuart told me with great passion that he felt almost a calling to tell what is a very remarkable and powerful story. And so I'm so happy to introduce to you Stuart Walker.
Thank you very much, Margaret.
Sure. So when you and I first talked several years ago, you told your story about how you had what I call perfectly hidden your depression. Can you tell people, first of all, how your depression got started and what you were aware of before you actually came into treatment?
My depression most likely got started when I was in college. Most noticeably, in my junior year of college, I found myself with panic attacks happening very frequently, probably not knowing what I was going to do in life. And I started finding myself racing out of a glass room. And,
wow.
You know, a couple of times I felt like I was having heart problems. It was causing some blood pressure issues, most likely not sleeping. And I also burned the candle at both ends.
Did you tell anybody about it?
Not at first, no. At first, I thought something was wrong with me. I didn't know what was in fact going on, why, what a panic attack was. I had a panic attack one night that I really thought I was having a heart attack.
Sure.
The night that I actually went back to Little Rock and, kind of told my parents really what was happening. I really thought I was having some sort of a heart event, not a panic attack. The following day, I just didn't want to get out of bed. My heart was racing all night long. I would just have this heart racing, mind racing,
Okay.
And I didn't necessarily know where it was coming from, but, maybe I didn't have my ducks in a row yet with life.
So what happened then?
I started the process of trying to get myself out of college, getting reorganized. I got a job in the athletic club industry, started working out, started taking care of myself. I also probably drank way too much then, so I definitely, I'm sure that was I had a little self-medication period there. That's a time when I found that getting up early, exercising was helpful to my, I don't know if I was aware if I had depression at that time, but I certainly was aware of my anxiety. And I had a prescription at that time and was able to get off of that. I actually was put on high blood pressure medication. I had to really manage my blood pressure. And it was stress-induced, sleep-induced, worry-induced, all of those types of things. And exercise really helped.
Okay, so let's fast forward to when you began recognizing that things were getting out of hand with your depression.
Well, I've probably always maybe I've always been an anxious person. That's not how anybody would ever describe me. My personality's probably pretty laid back.
Everybody sees Stu and they just smile. He's always laughing and talking and yucking it up with people.
I'm definitely not the person that anyone would think was having anxiety issues.
No.
But when me and my wife had children, we, after our first son at about 2 or 3 years of age, we got news that he had autism, and that threw me for a jolt. It was just suddenly life was not going to be on the path that you visualize how to handle that, all the course of treatment that would take. And so I began having pretty serious issues at that time. I think that was a struggle with marriage at that time too. My wife and I, neither one knew how do we handle all of this, what path it was.
Like, what kind of serious issues are you talking about?
With autism, you're just in the dark.
Oh, sure.
I think you're in the dark
all the time. You don't mean about yourself. You are talking about yourself, but you're really talking about your response and your reaction too.
I think there was a period of time with my son where, you do kind of have nightmares, not sleeping. It's constant worry about what life is going to be. And knowing now it's a situation that's in the future that hasn't happened yet, and you're constantly worrying about that. How are people going to treat him? What's that going to be like? Is he going to talk? Because he didn't talk for the longest time. It was really, for me, as a guy that has a lot of anxiety, a state of constant worry.
Sure.
And I went a long period where I just did not sleep.
Wow.
Very much. I mean, so I'd cat nap when I could, and I just, wasn't a good sleeper at all, so.
So was there anyone that you confided in that you were this, in some ways, internally broken by this and afraid of how you would respond? Not
at that time. I don't know that.
Do you know why?
I just kind of put on a good face, and a lot of that probably does have to be, I'm in a fitness business first off, and you do put on your good face. Mm-hmm. I ran a gym at the time that was a large gym. I probably had 150 people on staff and 6,000-7,000 customers, and you couldn't be the person that's there not in good spirits. So in general, I would put on a good face and come in and high five people and, keep everybody's spirits up. And it's the good part of people's day, and my role is to make it. So I definitely hid that during that time.
Yeah. So in some ways, if we can call this perfectionism, it wasn't necessarily your own perfectionism coming out, but it was the fact that you felt like other people expected you to look and act a certain way.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, those 6,000 or 7,000 people that were coming to the gym, they expected Stuart to be Stuart.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because there's some research that actually shows that that kind of perfectionism is what is most dangerous, actually can lead to thoughts about hurting yourself, that kind of thing, more than other kinds of perfectionism. But go ahead. That's enough research. We want to hear your story.
Probably for me, I went through a professional and a few years later having more kids. The place that I worked had a major expansion, and it had a major expansion as, obviously the economy in the 2006, 7, and 8 period was collapsing, and I was caught up in the middle trying to work as hard as we could, trying to help my wife figure out how to scale work back so that she could take care of our son. And then we were going to have another child, which turned into twins. And then when we had our twins, we found out we had a situation called twin-to-twin syndrome with the girls, which really just kind of spurred on a lot of birth defects in some ways for both babies. But Lexi, my daughter Lexi, would be called the recipient baby or the donor baby, and Katie would have been the recipient baby. And Lexi just did not have enough nourishment, and it spurred everything from blindness in one eye and deafness in one ear, or almost deafness. Her skull didn't quite develop. She's on a liver transplant list. She's just had a multitude of disabilities, including autism. So Katie at the time was actually diagnosed with a heart defect that we thought was going to be open heart surgery. That was their initial diagnosis, but it was one of those that it kept getting better, not worse. So we kind of caught a break with Katie. She's really developed and been very healthy and been the big sister in our house. But I kind of had a perfect storm of children with disabilities, managing this place. I could see where we were heading. We overbuilt, and we weren't bringing in enough members to pay the bills, and we were getting to that period where you were laying people off, but trying to also act like the business was doing well.
So there was no place. There was no place where you could sort of put your feet up and go, all right, I can take 10 or 15 minutes here just for me. It was constant pressure everywhere you went.
At that time, my day didn't shut down. It really, from the time I got up to the time I went to bed, it was just go. I mean, the phone, the email, it was a lot of people. And if I wasn't at the club, we were having some sort of appointment at a hospital, some sort of trip, trying to discuss with Missy and be available, which I don't think I was. I think I was, numb.
Missy is his wife, for those of you who don't know. And, it sounds like a stupid question then to say, well, what made you become so depressed that it got really dangerous for you? And you haven't really talked about that yet, but I know what's coming. Obviously, even one of these things would have been enough in and of itself. So as you think about what began to change in you, or your own sense of, okay, I can handle this. Okay, I can handle this. Okay, I can handle this. What broke?
Well, the thing that started happening with me, I started having a repeated thought in my head. And it was kind of like pressure building. And when I was driving, I would just kind of visualize running into a wall of a bridge.
Wow.
And and as weird as that sounds, you could kind of visualize an implosion, and it was as if that pressure subsided for just
for a
moment. And I started finding myself doing that over and over and over. Sometimes I would do that at night when I slept, sometimes when I came home, certainly in the car, but during the daytime, you'd just close your eyes and do that. I went through thoughts of doing that with a bridge, and I did that with thoughts of doing that with a pistol, where you would just think about a pistol going off. And as weird as that seems to say, it was like a relief of pressure or tension for just a second. And you would exercise that.
As if there is a way out.
As if something is a little bit of a relief. I don't even know how I still today don't put that thought with me at all. But then after a while, you start. At one point, I found myself on an interstate speeding, and actually kind of to a certain extent thinking of, what would that be like? Can I push that closer? I don't own a gun, so that was
That's
good.
That's a good thing. Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't in the.
That's right.
I didn't have the headspace to certainly have a weapon in the house either. So that was a good thing. But I just felt like I didn't have control of my thoughts there for a period, or what I might do to myself, and I really did not have an outlet. I did have an outlet, but I didn't talk to anybody. I certainly felt like with my wife, she had enough on her plate, and I was trying to put on a good face. Mm-hmm. Our club was kind of precarious, so I was trying to put on a good face, and I was really working to try to bail ourselves out as fast as I could, and that kind of was going well, but it was a tremendous amount of pressure.
So
my relationship with bosses, my employer, was really tense. So there just was not a good place. I did not have a person there that I could really spill all that to, and I think I sounded crazy. I still do to a certain extent. Repeating, having a suicidal type thought like that doesn't sound like something that you want to spill to somebody.
Well, of course not in many ways, because it reveals how vulnerable you're feeling on the inside, and people don't want to do that. Plus, people would look at you. I mean, given what your persona was outside of that, they'd say, "Well, I don't get that. You look great. What are you talking about?" I mean, the disjointedness of the way you were presenting and wanted to present, and what was really going on internally, was so different that people would have a hard time understanding, unless they knew that people do that actually all the time. Mm-hmm. So was there anything that happened? Was there any kind of culmination of emotions or experiences that you said, all right, I can't do this anymore?
Well, I broke down in front of my wife one night. I mean, I was at a point where by the time I got home, it was 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night, and obviously my wife's got the kids, she's got my son, she wants to talk, and I'm brain dead. I don't think I was much of a husband at that time because I stared at a wall and I just, and Missy was trying her best to talk and get to the root of you need to do something. And she was proactive. She was having so many of the same issues and she was seeing you. Mm-hmm. So you were our only real outlet as far as a person that a therapist that I knew that was out there. And I broke down one night really when she was asking me questions. I finally spoke about it and she made me go see you.
Yes, she did.
And I was really.
And you chose to be honest with me.
Yeah, I was just at a breaking point. I knew that I was. I knew that all day long I was literally kind of closing my eyes and running this scenario through my head, and it was. In my head, I was always. I've had friends that have committed suicide. I've known people, that you just go, gosh, I don't put that together. Yeah. And I think I was recognizing at that point that I'm in that space. Mm-hmm. And so when I spilled, I spilled. So that's what I needed. I needed to unburden myself of a lot of things, and it wasn't just kids. There was marriage, how we were dealing with marriage. There was work.
There was a tragic death of a friend, as I remember.
Oh, yeah. I was carrying that around for years. My son is actually named after my best friend growing up, mm-hmm. and I just had never unloaded. That actually started my freshman year of college, which probably carried into anxiety and relationships and stuff. But I just had never unloaded or unburdened in my I don't know when you do.
Well, and I remember in our work together, we were sort of searching around for other kinds of things that may have worked together to make you someone who wouldn't do that. And basically you said, it's just because I'm a guy. I was taught to be a guy. I was taught to keep these kinds of things to myself and take care of business.
Well, that's definitely the case. I don't know if we're taught that necessarily. I guess you are taught that in school.
You modeled that.
Yeah, you modeled that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you suck it up,
mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely, when there was a lot of pressure, I don't know that you can cave. I mean, when I felt like our business was precarious, not our business, the place that I worked, you certainly can't let anybody know that you're not confident in where you work. And it's the same thing with I've certainly at least felt like with my family, I needed to be strong for my wife. She actually needed me to talk and stop being hard-headed, as it turns out. She needed a partner in it, not what I thought was.
Well, what you're talking about, if I can put a psychological spin on it, is the skill of compartmentalization. And it's when we have something that's troubling and we put it in a box somewhere, and we put the box on top of the closet and we say, I'll get to that when I can. And that is a skill. Everybody has to do that. You can't walk around constantly with what's in your heart and mind, especially if it's sad or you're grieving or you're angry or you're hopeless or whatever it happens to be. You can't necessarily carry that around with you, but you can overdo that, and you can do that so rigidly that you're not touching any of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what was happening with you. So what's different now?
Well, I still have a lot of the pressures. Mm-hmm. First off, my relationship with my wife is awesome. I mean, we do talk about things, and I do walk in when I need to talk. I've up until that point, I certainly had never shed a tear in front of my wife, and I have many times now. Mm-hmm. So we have a different type of relationship. I got out of my employment situation really at the time. The place that I was working wasn't going to make it. I lost my job.
Gosh.
So I went through a period where I lost my job. We went from free insurance to about $1,700 a month with COBRA with 3 kids that had some sort of disability at the time. And that was a scary time. And I had to find my way, and we built a business. That's what I knew how to do. I couldn't find a job at that particular time. I was skilled to run a health club and not much in our area. So part of that gave me a purpose, I think, a little bit of a sense of purpose. I think for a while I was running around feeling like I don't know how to help my kids. I don't know how to help my wife. I don't know how to help this business that I'm running. So losing my job, to a certain extent, I got a little bit back on my feet when I was at least working on creating a job again. That was a dire situation, but it was okay.
Sure. So, Stuart, what made you come to me that you said, I want to tell my story, when we did the thing for YouTube?
Oh, so much of that, I had just gotten better. My pressure had actually gone up. My daughter had been through so many surgeries, and our business was still tough. It was a health club business, and the economy was scary, and trying to figure out how to pay everybody and find customers. It was a lot of pressure, and I just felt like I found a way to check myself. And it helped so much, and you helped so much. Finding a way to talk and develop a strategy to how to live life. I see these customers, and I think the part that of wanting to tell my story is that I see people, really daily, that they walk in our door and they're coming into a gym and they want to feel better. And I know that one thing, they want to feel better, but they've got a wall up and they don't hardly give us any information. They don't want to tell you too much. I don't know if they think you're going to get sold or whatever it is, but they have a wall up. And most of the time, so many times, people don't make it. They never talk. They have a lot of other things that are going to keep them from actually exercising. They may hate their job. It could be a bad marriage. It could be a death in the family, but we don't know that. And it's frustrating to watch people not make it that when you had the first conversation, they came in and they more or less tell you they just need to start feeling better.
Sure.
And I don't know what that is.
But they don't really know how to express it.
They don't know how to express it.
Mm.
They don't know how to express it any better than I was expressing it. I wanted to feel better when I was in that situation badly. I had a lot of other things. Exercise wasn't going to be the thing that necessarily fixed it. It helped. And it still helps today, but it's a lot of strategies.
Sure. On multi-levels, really.
That really have to come into play, and you have to get organized and figure out what you want your life to look like and where to go. And you helped me put all those things together.
Well, this isn't a commercial for Dr. Margaret Rutherford, but thank you.
It's true. I'd never done any type of therapy before, but I did not have a way, given my set of circumstances, which weren't going to change. I was still going to have 2 children with autism. I would think about the possibility of closing my eyes and thinking about taking a pistol to my head or running into the side of a bridge, and that could have possibly happened, or that I would ever act on something like that, to today where, I feel great about where my kids are, and I feel great about where my business and what we do. And it is hard and it is challenging, but I certainly found some appreciation in life and some purpose in life.
And what happened, because what Stu and I did was we put a video on YouTube now several years ago, and I splashed it all over Facebook. I splashed it all over the Good Men Project. I splashed it on Huffington Post. I put it wherever it would get some attention. And what has been the response to you from people?
I just had one person after another walk up to me and thank me for talking, and I just had an enormous amount of especially men come up, and lots of women that just said, I feel the same way.
Wow.
And
that is incredible.
And it's a little overwhelming because I don't know what, I'm not situated to help them with anything other than exercise, but it's led to a bunch of wonderful conversations with people to let them know to hang in there and find some help, and that you can tackle it. Yeah.
Well, it seems very trite to say to you that, I'm so glad that you did what Missy asked you to do, and you came in. It happened to be my door, but and so obviously you and your family and everyone who knows you and who you love and who loves you has benefited. So good for you, and thank you so much for being here. Is there any piece of advice you might give someone who is in the same boat you were in, or a similar one?
Really, with anybody, it's just that it's okay to open up and talk.
To give yourself permission.
To give yourself permission. Yeah. I wasted a lot of time standing there frozen, and you just don't have to do that. You can start that process of getting better today really easy.
Well, I hope you'll listen to Stu and reach out. You can always email me at askdrmargaret@drmargaretrutherford.com as well. But we'll talk more about that in a moment. Thank you so much, Stu.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to me and my first live guest, Stuart Walker, as we talked about perfectly hidden depression. As I said, you can always email me. And in fact, I would love for more of you to email me. Ask Dr. Margaret at drmargaretrutherford.com. It gives me a chance to get to know who is listening to this. I can tell where you're from, but I cannot tell if you're a man or a woman, or obviously I can't tell the reasons why you're listening, but I'd love to hear that from you. Perhaps I could create a podcast just for you. So please email me at askdrmargaret at drmargaretrutherford.com. It is confidential. I will be the only one who sees it, and I will be the only one who responds. There are many ways of getting in touch with me. My website is drmargaretrutherford.com. My Facebook, which I post weekly podcasts and blog posts, is facebook.com/drmargaretrutherford. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Pinterest. And of course, I'd love it if you left a rating and review. Not all my ratings are great, but that's okay. I want your honest opinion of the show. And if you leave one, I'd like to hear what you like about it or don't like about it in the review. That would really help me make sure that self-work is something that at least the majority of the people who are listening look forward to and anticipate. And of course, subscribe. You can do that on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean. And of course, as I said before, you can do it on my own website. I'd welcome you there, drmargaretrutherford.com. Thanks for listening. I thoroughly enjoyed my interview with Stuart, and I hope that you did too. Take very good care. I'm Dr. Margaret, and this has been SelfWork.